My phone buzzed while I was wiping down tables at the corner cafe. Unknown number. I almost ignored it until I heard the company name that still made my chest tighten. "This is Dorian Pike," a calm voice said. "I'm the new director. We found something you need to see." I laughed because crying in front of customers seemed unprofessional. 5 years since they escorted me out with accusations and a cardboard box. 5 years of whispering behind hands and job applications that went nowhere. "What did you find?" I asked, gripping the phone tighter. "Footage," he said simply. "From the night the money disappeared." My heart stopped, then raced. The security cameras had supposedly malfunctioned that night. I'd begged them to check backup systems. Instead, they'd checked my bank accounts, my emails, my entire life. "The cameras were broken," I said carefully. "We found a backup drive." Dorian replied, "Can you come in tomorrow morning, please?" I stared at the espresso machine, remembering the marble lobby, the executive floor, the conference room where they'd called me a thief. Tomorrow felt impossible and necessary. "What time?" I asked. 9 o'clock, main entrance. I agreed before I could change my mind. The building looked exactly the same. Glass and steel reaching toward clouds that didn't care about innocence or guilt. My hands shook as I pulled open the heavy door. The security guard glanced up from his desk. His eyes widened slightly. 5 years ago, he'd looked away while they marched me past with my belongings. Now he cleared his throat. "Name?" he asked quietly. I told him. He printed a visitor badge and slid it across the counter without meeting my gaze. The elevator ride to the 17th floor felt longer than it should. I watched the numbers climb and remembered the last time I'd made this journey. 2 managers flanking me, everyone staring. The elevator doors opened. A young receptionist stood immediately, her chair scraping against the floor. "Mr. Pike is expecting you," she said. "Conference room B." I followed her pointing finger down a hallway lined with awards and achievements. The company had done well since my departure. They'd thrived while I'd learned to make cappuccinos. The conference room door stood open. Inside sat a man about my age with tired eyes and a laptop already glowing. He stood when I entered. "Thank you for coming," Dorian said. "I know this isn't easy." The room smelled like cleaning products and old coffee. Dorian gestured toward a chair across from him. I sat, keeping my back straight and my face neutral. "I'll get right to it," he said, turning the laptop screen toward me. This was on a backup drive stored off-site. Someone misfiled it 5 years ago. Misfiled. The word tasted bitter. He pressed play. The timestamp matched the night they claimed I stole $82,000. A grainy corridor appeared, then a door labeled Accounts Payable. My old department. A figure moved into frame, too tall to be me, too broad-shouldered. He glanced up briefly, and my breath caught. Arden Radcliffe, my former boss, the man who'd sworn in a written statement that he was home with a migraine that night. 2 more men joined him. They moved quickly, confidently. The door opened. They slipped inside. Minutes later, they emerged carrying thick envelopes tucked under their jackets. The video flickered and froze. "This was on a freight elevator camera," Dorian explained softly, "the one connected to a separate system." I couldn't speak. 5 years of shame, of sideways glances, of explaining gaps in my resume, all because nobody had checked the right camera. "I'm sorry," Dorian said. His voice was steady and sincere. "We failed you completely." My throat felt tight. "Why now? Why are you looking into this?" "Because I'm thorough," he replied, "and because small inconsistencies kept appearing in our accounts. When I dug deeper, I found your case. Nothing about it made sense." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were audit logs, badge access records, and server timestamps. Everything they should have examined 5 years ago. "I need your help," Dorian continued. "You know this system better than anyone. You built half of these processes." I stared at the papers. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave them drowning in their own mistakes. But another part, the part that had spent 5 years being called a thief, needed this. "What happens to Arden?" I asked. "Depends on what we prove and how fast we move," Dorian said. "Are you willing to help?" I thought about the cafe, about wiping tables and counting tips. I thought about my mother's tears when the news broke. I thought about friends who'd stopped calling. "Yes," I said. "I'll help." Dorian nodded. "There's something else you should know. This wasn't the only theft." Dorian opened a spreadsheet that made my head spin. Columns of numbers, dates, and transaction codes filled the screen. He pointed to highlighted sections. The 82,000 was just the beginning, he said. Look at these rounding errors, these vendor refunds that don't match invoices, small amounts across dozens of accounts. I leaned closer, scanning the entries. My stomach dropped as I recognized the pattern. Every suspicious transaction had been approved through my department's workflow. They used your position to hide their tracks, Dorian explained. Your access became their cover. I remembered Arden standing behind my desk asking me to approve routine transfers. I remembered him calling certain discrepancies normal accounting noise and telling me not to worry. I remembered trusting him. He trained us to ignore these, I said quietly, circling 3 entries with my finger. Called them budget adjustments. Dorian pulled out a document. I need you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. What we're doing next could get complicated. I signed without hesitation. 5 years of silence had been enough. What's next? I asked. We talked to someone who saw everything but couldn't speak up, Dorian said. Someone in facilities. Her name was Maribel, and she looked exactly how I remembered, quiet strength wrapped in a maintenance uniform. We met in a small office near the loading docks. She studied me carefully before sitting down. I worked nights back then, Maribel said slowly. I saw things. Dorian leaned forward. What did you see? Them. She gestured toward the laptop still showing Arden's face. They used the service elevator around 2 in the morning. Carried boxes to the loading dock. I thought it was strange, so I mentioned it to security. What did security say? I asked. Maribel's jaw tightened. They told me to focus on cleaning and leave the thinking to management. The words landed like stones. She tried to help, and they dismissed her. Just like they'd dismissed my protests. There's more, Maribel continued. She pulled out a small thumb drive. The freight elevator has cameras nobody knows about. Old system, independent backup. I kept a copy, just in case. Dorian accepted the drive like it was made of glass. This could change everything. Maribel looked at me. They destroyed you for something you didn't do. I should have fought harder. You're fighting now, I said. That's what matters. The basement level felt forgotten by time. Dorian's security badge opened a door I'd never noticed during my years here. Inside sat rows of old servers humming quietly in the dim light. Legacy storage, Dorian explained, crouching beside a rack covered in dust. If the freight camera system wrote to a local buffer before connecting to the main network, the data might still be here. He pulled out a drive, connected it to his laptop with a cable from his bag, and we watched file names scroll past. My heart pounded as directories appeared on screen. There, I said, pointing to a folder dated the week they accused me. Dorian clicked. More video files, more corridors, more proof. Arden appeared again with his 2 accomplices. But this time, the camera caught something new. Me. Arriving at 7 in the morning with coffee in hand, walking toward my desk on the opposite side of the building. Nowhere near the accounts payable office. This proves you couldn't have been there, Dorian said quietly. I stared at my past self on the screen, innocent and unaware of what was coming. They buried this, I whispered. Now we bury them. Dorian replied. I needed someone who remembered the truth without fear stopping their tongue. I texted Tomas, a former colleague who'd left the company 6 months after I did. We agreed to meet at a park where office walls couldn't hear us. I always knew you didn't do it, Tomas said immediately, sitting on a bench that overlooked the river. But Arden controlled everything. Schedules, bonuses, promotions. People were terrified of him. Tell me about the others, I said. Mahoney and Voss. Tomas's expression darkened. They had drinks together every Thursday, called them strategy sessions. Sometimes they'd joke about beating the system, about being smarter than auditors. I thought it was just arrogance. I showed him frames from the footage. His face went pale. That's definitely them. Would you testify? Dorian asked. Tomas hesitated, fingers twisting together. If I do this, will I end up blacklisted like... He stopped, looking at me apologetically. We'll protect you, Dorian promised. The company is behind this investigation now. Tomas exhaled slowly. Then yes, I should have spoken up 5 years ago. So should they, I said, watching the river carry water that didn't care about human justice. We spent 3 days mapping transactions like detectives in a crime drama. Every rounding error pointed toward a shell company with an official-sounding name and a post office box in a suburb nobody visited. Dorian traced the registration. His face went still when he found the owner's name. A.R. Finch Consulting, he read aloud. Registered to Arden Radcliffe Finch. Finch was his dog's name, I said quietly. He used to show me pictures. The audacity made me dizzy with rage. He'd stolen money using his pet's name while destroying my career. We pulled up emails next. There was Arden, authorizing temporary overrides in my department. There was his signature on forms nobody else had reviewed. One message made my hands shake. Arden had written to me, "Leave the month-end reconciliations until Monday morning. No rush." Monday morning, the day after the money vanished. I printed it, slid it into a red folder Dorian labeled Prosecution Evidence. "We take this to the board," Dorian said. My mouth went dry. "The same board that watched me burn 5 years ago?" "This time," Dorian said, "we'll make them watch something they can't ignore." The boardroom felt like a courtroom built from expensive wood and uncomfortable silence. 8 executives sat around the table, pretending they didn't recognize me. Dorian connected his laptop to the screen. "Thank you for gathering on short notice," he began. "We have evidence of systematic theft, spanning 5 years. Evidence that exonerates a former employee we wrongly terminated." He pressed play. Arden's face filled the screen, caught in the act. The room went completely silent. Dorian walked them through the shell company, the transaction patterns, the hidden camera footage. "We failed," he said clearly. "We believed the wrong person and destroyed an innocent career." A woman at the head of the table cleared her throat. "Why is she here?" Dorian didn't blink. "Because she's the reason we can fix this." I kept my hands folded on the table, kept my face neutral. I watched understanding dawn slowly across their faces, understanding that should have come 5 years earlier. "We'll need legal counsel," someone said, "and law enforcement." The board chairwoman looked directly at me for the first time. "Your record will be cleared, your reputation restored." "My life," I corrected quietly. "Start there." She nodded once, starting immediately. The lawyer's office smelled like old books and new ambition. Her name was Braga, a former prosecutor who'd built a reputation defending people the system had failed. She studied the evidence with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "This is solid," she said, tapping the laptop screen. "But they'll claim fabrication unless we establish perfect chain of custody." Dorian produced logs from the basement server room, signed by a technician who'd retired to Arizona 3 years ago. "We'll get him on video call to verify the drives were intact and untouched." Braga nodded approvingly. "Good. Now, do you want to be present when we bring them in?" I thought about Arden calling me kiddo while signing my termination papers. I thought about 5 years of explaining why I'd been fired, watching potential employers' faces close like doors. "Yes," I said. "I want to be there." Braga's smile was sharp and cold. "Excellent, because watching someone face the person they destroyed hits differently than facing strangers." We spent the next hour planning the approach. Start with the weakest link, Voss. Offer him a cooperation deal. Let his confession crack the others open. "They'll scatter like roaches when the light hits," Braga said. "We need to move fast." Voss arrived at the office wearing confidence like an expensive suit. Dorian and Braga met him in a conference room with windows that showed nothing but gray sky. I sat in an adjacent room, watching through one-way glass. "Routine compliance review," Dorian explained pleasantly. "Just a few questions about department procedures." Voss relaxed slightly. "Of course. Happy to help." Braga asked about freight elevator usage. Voss denied ever using it. She smiled and clicked a remote. The wall screen lit up with his face under the camera's unforgiving eye, carrying an envelope at 2 in the morning. The confidence drained from Voss's expression. "That could be anyone," he tried. "It's you," Braga said, "and it's admissible in court." They slid a cooperation agreement across the table. Voss stared at it like a snake staring at a mongoose. His hands trembled slightly. "Why me first?" he asked. "Because you scare the others less," I said, stepping into the room. His eyes went wide. You're still here," I finished. "Still fighting." He signed the agreement with a pen that seemed too heavy for his shaking hand. "Arden will run," he warned. "The moment he knows." "We'll be faster," Braga promised. Arden walked into the conference room 2 days later like he owned every inch of floor. He saw me and stopped mid-stride. Something ugly flickered across his face before vanishing behind his practiced smile. "This is unnecessary," he said smoothly. "Whatever misunderstanding." "Watch," Braga interrupted, pressing play. Arden watched himself on screen. Watched himself lie in real time. He leaned back and laughed. "Nice try. Deepfake technology is everywhere now." Dorian slid the chain of custody documents across the table, notarized by 3 separate technicians. The drives were sealed in a climate-controlled facility, verified by an independent forensic expert. Arden's smile thinned. He glanced at the papers, then at me. "You don't belong here." "Neither do thieves," I replied. The door opened. 2 police detectives stepped inside, badges visible on their belts. "Arden Radcliffe," the first one said, "you're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud." Arden went very still. For just a moment I saw panic in his eyes. Then he smirked. "You think this ends with me?" he said quietly. "You have no idea where this starts." The detectives led him away in handcuffs. I watched him go and felt nothing except tired relief. The news exploded across every platform. Headlines screamed about corporate corruption and wrongful termination. My phone filled with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Some apologizing, some asking for interviews, some just wanting proximity to drama. The company released a statement calling my termination a grievous error in judgment. I read it twice and felt hollow. Where was this statement 5 years ago? My landlord left a note under my apartment door. "Saw the news. Always knew you were innocent. Proud of you." I sat on my kitchen floor and cried into a dish towel so neighbors wouldn't hear. Then the threats started. An email from a disposable address. "Back off or everything comes out." Everything? What else was hidden? I forwarded it to Braga. Her response came within minutes. "They're panicking." Good. But panic made people dangerous. I stared at my ceiling until the cracks looked like a map of something unfinished. If there was more to this story, we'd barely scratched the surface. I texted Dorian, "Something's missing." His reply was immediate. "Meet me at records." Midnight. The records department at midnight felt like a library after the world ended. Dorian had already wheeled out 3 boxes when I arrived, their labels faded with age. "Mahoney," he said, tapping the nearest one. "He's been quiet. Too quiet." We cut through packing tape and dug through a decade of paper trails. I found expense reports from something called a leadership retreat, paid for by the same shell company we'd traced. Receipts for a lake house rental, catering invoices for 8 people. Then photographs tumbled out. Men in casual clothes standing on a dock holding drinks and laughing. Arden was there, so were Mahoney and Voss. But there was someone else. A man I recognized from industry magazines. Keene. A consultant famous for restructuring companies in ways that left employees bleeding. "He was our efficiency advisor 3 years running," Dorian said quietly. "He's the one who suggested reducing the compliance team." I stared at Keene's face in the photo, his arm around Arden's shoulders. He taught them how to steal. "And how to hide it," Dorian agreed. "We need to dig deeper." We pulled calendar backups from the server. Mahoney's schedule showed a week-long strategic planning session at the exact time the largest cluster of fraudulent transactions occurred. Keene's consulting invoice listed that same week as advisory services rendered. I traced the money carefully. 80,000 here, 50,000 there, hopscotching through banks before landing in a brokerage account hidden under my old department's cost center code. They'd used my authorization numbers as camouflage. Every theft wore my fingerprints. "I need to see IT," I said. "Not the main team, the overnight technicians who actually keep things running." Dorian made calls. An engineer named Skylar met us in a room full of humming servers and blinking lights. She listened to our explanation, then smiled grimly. "They paid someone to erase files," she said. "But erasing leaves footprints if you know where to look." She pulled up access logs showing a remote session from an account that shouldn't exist. The username made my breath catch. A.R. Finch. "Can you trace where they connected from?" Dorian asked. Skylar's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Already done. IP address connects to a private network registered to a property trust." She pulled up the address. "Lake House, 2 hours north." Braga secured a warrant within 6 hours. We drove north in a convoy that felt surreal. Police cars, lawyers, Dorian and me following behind. The lake house appeared through trees like something from a magazine, all glass and expensive views. Inside, a home office overlooked the water. The desk held a computer still warm from recent use. In the bottom drawer, wrapped in a folder marked personal, we found it, a handwritten ledger. Names, dates, amounts, percentages calculated in neat columns. My name appeared 3 times. Next to it, scapegoat confirmed. My hands shook as I touched the page. Someone had written those words, had planned my destruction like a business expense. This is everything, Braga said softly. This is the proof that connects everyone. The printer still held warm paper. On top sat a document titled Emergency Communications Protocol, instructions for what to do if the investigation widened. My name appeared again. Maintain distance. Let her credibility remain damaged. I pressed my palm flat against the desk to stop the shaking. They never planned to let me clear my name. They didn't plan on you fighting back, Dorian said. Buried in the ledger was something that made my stomach drop. Tomas's initials appeared 3 times next to small amounts. A few thousand here. A few hundred there. No, I whispered. Dorian scanned the entries quickly. Could be a setup. They knew he'd eventually cooperate. This might be insurance. Or Tomas had taken just enough to survive, just enough to keep quiet. My chest felt tight. We bring him in immediately, Braga said, already reaching for her phone. In the car ride back, I stared out the window and tried not to imagine every person I'd trusted turning into another lie. Tomas had seemed genuine. He'd seemed sorry. But so had Arden, once upon a time. Don't assume the worst, Dorian said quietly, watching me in the rearview mirror. Let him explain. I nodded but couldn't speak. 5 years of betrayal had taught me that explanations didn't always equal truth. Tomas sat in a windowless room with his hands wrapped around a paper cup of water he wasn't drinking. We slid the ledger across the table, opened to the page with his initials. He read the entries and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. They threatened me, he said hoarsely. After you were fired, Mahoney pulled me into his office, told me I could either help with some after-hours reconciliations or end up investigated like you. Did you take money? Braga asked directly. Never, Tomas said firmly. I signed off on transfers I didn't understand. They called it participation insurance. Said if I ever talked, these entries would make me look complicit. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Inside was a note on company letterhead, Mahoney's handwriting, promising career considerations in exchange for cooperation. Braga examined it under a document camera. Under UV light, invisible ink appeared. Keep your mouth shut or join her. This exonerates you, Braga said, and proves they planned everything. I looked at Tomas, at his shaking hands and terrified eyes. I believe you, I said quietly. Relief crashed across his face. What now? Now, Braga said, you help us set a trap. We staged a meeting under the pretense of damage control discussions. Tomas texted Mahoney from a secure phone, we need to talk. Things are falling apart. Mahoney agreed immediately. Too immediately. We wired the conference room with microphones hidden in planters and light fixtures. Police waited in an adjacent room. I sat behind one-way glass, watching Mahoney arrive, sweating and agitated. This is contained, Mahoney said as soon as he sat down. Arden takes the fall. Voss stays quiet. You stay quiet. We all move on. And if I don't? Tomas asked carefully. Mahoney leaned across the table. Then you'll find out how hard it is to work in this industry with the wrong reputation. Trust me, we've done it before. Braga stepped through a door Mahoney hadn't noticed. Please continue. Mahoney's face went white, then red. He tried to smile. We're all adults here. This can be resolved. You're right, Braga said calmly. It can. The side door opened. 2 detectives walked in. Mahoney, you're under arrest. His chair scraped backward. You don't understand, he hissed at me through the glass he couldn't see. Keene will destroy all of you. He always does. The name hung in the air like a threat. Keene didn't come willingly. We had to coordinate with police to bring him in from his downtown office tower. He entered the conference room wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly rent and an expression of mild boredom. You've built an impressive narrative, he said, sitting without being invited. I respect the craftsmanship. Braga set the ledger, the footage, and the lake house documents on the table. Keene glanced at them without interest. Your mistake, he said calmly, is assuming anyone cares about victims who don't matter to shareholders. The words hit like ice water. I leaned forward. I mattered. I screamed for 5 years. You just didn't listen. Keen smiled slightly. Would you like a settlement? I can make this go away quietly. The offer felt like a slap. Dorian spoke before I could. We'd like a conviction. Keen shrugged. Then prepare for disappointment. I have excellent lawyers. Braga tilted her head. How excellent are they against surprise witnesses? The conference door opened. Maribel walked in, carrying a maintenance log like it was evidence in a murder trial. I kept records, she said clearly. Every time you came here after hours, every camera you had switched to test mode. She set down the log. You were here when the money moved. Every time. Keen's composure finally cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but visible. Braga slid a plea agreement across the table. Choose quickly. The legal proceedings moved faster than I'd imagined justice could travel. Preliminary hearings, evidence submissions, media trucks camped outside the courthouse like they were covering a celebrity trial. I took the stand on a Tuesday morning. The courtroom smelled like old wood and nervous energy. I told the truth in a voice that didn't apologize for existing. The defense tried to paint me as bitter and vindictive. They were right about bitter. 5 years of being called a thief made bitterness feel earned. We played the footage for the jury. We traced the shell companies. We showed the handwritten ledger with my name marked as a scapegoat. The prosecutor's questions were straightforward. The defense's objections grew desperate. The judge's gavel sounded like punctuation at the end of a very long sentence. Keen pled guilty to conspiracy and fraud. Mahoney and Voss followed within days, their lawyers negotiating sentences. Arden tried to maintain his smirk through the sentencing hearing. It looked painful. Guilty, the judge said. Then again. Guilty. And again. Guilty. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Someone asked how it felt to be vindicated. I opened my mouth and saw my phone light up with a text from my mother. We're watching. We're crying. We're proud. I forgive myself, I told the cameras clustered outside the courthouse. Not Arden, not the company, not the board who'd watched me burn. Myself. Because I was the one I'd been cruelest to for 5 years. The company offered reinstatement at triple my old salary. They offered a public apology across every platform. I asked for something else instead. Clear my name everywhere you smeared it, I said in the negotiation room, and create a fund for employees who get destroyed by rumors and executive protection. Dorian backed me without hesitation. The board agreed with the enthusiasm of people trying to outrun their own shadows. We signed the settlement in the same glass conference room where they'd once accused me. I wrote my name slowly, feeling each letter. Afterward, I stood at the window watching the city move below. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt level, like a table that had finally been set on even legs after years of wobbling. My phone rang. Unknown number again. This is a documentary producer, the voice said. We think your story could help others. I looked at my reflection in the glass. It's not entertainment, I said. It's a warning. She paused. Even better. When can we talk? I scheduled the meeting and hung up smiling. On my last day at the cafe, I folded my apron into a neat square and pinned a note to the employee board. Believe the voice that shakes. My coworkers hugged me. The owner gave me a gift card in tears. I walked out into afternoon sunlight that felt different than it had 5 years ago. Outside the courthouse, Arden was being transferred to begin his sentence. He saw me standing on the steps, tried to find his old smirk, couldn't manage it. You took my career, I said, loud enough for him to hear. You didn't take me. He blinked hard. The transport van door closed. The lock clicked like a period at the end of a sentence. Dorian met me with 2 cups of coffee and a smile that finally looked natural. What's next? He asked. I looked at the skyline. I have a name people tried to destroy, I said. Time to use it for something that matters. I walked down the courthouse steps with my head up and my hands empty for the first time in years. No cardboard box, no evidence folders, no weight I hadn't chosen, just a future I'd rebuilt from ashes. 6 months later, I stood in a conference room that didn't smell like fear. The nonprofit was small but growing. We helped people wrongfully accused by their employers navigate legal systems designed to protect power instead of truth. Maribel worked as our facilities coordinator. Tomas handled finances. Dorian served on the board. Together, we'd helped 17 people clear their names. My phone buzzed with a message from a woman in Seattle. They fired me for theft I didn't commit. Can you help? I typed back immediately. Yes, send me everything. Outside the window, the city moved forward like it always did. Indifferent to individual suffering, blind to small justices. But I wasn't indifferent anymore. Wasn't blind. I'd learned that truth doesn't always win quickly, that justice sometimes takes years and requires fury wrapped in patience, that the people who tried to bury you never expect you to become the shovel that digs them up. My desk held a framed photo from the courthouse steps. Me, Dorian, Braga, Maribel, and Tomas. We looked tired and triumphant and real. The coffee had gone cold while I worked. I drank it anyway. It tasted like proof that broken things could be made whole if you refused to stay broken. My name was clear, my voice was steady, my purpose was sharp. They'd tried to make me disappear. Instead, I'd become impossible to ignore. And that felt like the best revenge of all.